Hello everyone. In today's video, I'm going to talk about why some people get really low score in pronunciation and because of that struggle in speaking. Basically, I'll talking about how fluency is evaluated in your test, how pronunciation is evaluated in your test, and how they look into your overall speaking performance. After that, I will talk about 5 important tips which can help you to get better score in your next test. If you are interested, keep watching. Alright, let's talk about fluency. In fluency, you can get from 5 to 1, or you can also get 0 if the computer decides that you are disfluent. What that means is you cannot speak even a few words without any hesitation. Basically, when Pearson's algorithm is trying to decide how much score you should get in fluency, they look at 4 things, and they are called hesitation, repetition, and false start. And after that, long pause. If you do not make any long pause, then you might get 5, 4, or 3 points. And that depends on 3 things: how many false starts you had, how many repetition you had, and how many hesitations you had. If you have no hesitation, no repetition, and no false start, then you get 5 points. If you have 1 hesitation, 1 repetition, or 1 false start, you get 4 points. If you have more than 1 hesitation, more than 1 repetition, or more than 1 false start, then you get 3. Now, if you have made more than 1 hesitation, 1 repetition, and 1 false start along with 1 long pause, you get just 2. And if there were more than 1 long pauses, then your fluency score drops to 1. In essence, if we think about what not to do in the test, then one of the things that becomes apparent from this discussion is we should not have very long pauses, because if there is more than 1 long pause, our score drops to 1. And perhaps even 0 as well, depending on how long the pause was. So you need to be really careful about that. Not just that, for people who are looking for high score, you also need to work on hesitation, repetition, and false start. Now, I hope you understand what hesitation and repetition are, but many people have no idea what is a false start. False start means you start a sentence, and in the middle of the sentence, you realize that the sentence is impossible to be completed. And that's why you start the sentence one more time. An example of this is, tomorrow I'm going to, when I do this, that's a false start. That means started the sentence, reached the middle, and then realized sentence cannot be completed and restarted again. You should avoid it. In other words, if you find that you are going to make a mistake, your sentence is going to be grammatically wrong, or you feel like the word choice will not be appropriate, in such cases, you are more tempted to repeat yourself or restart the sentence. But you should never do that. As you have seen yourself, depending on how many times you do it, your fluency score starts dropping from 5 to 4 to 3. On the other hand, you should also be careful about pauses. Longer the pause, lower the score. And if there are too many long pauses, your score starts dropping, even if you are speaking quite nicely in other parts. And that's why in fluency, a simplified approach would be to keep talking no matter what happens and ignoring the mistakes. I'll talk about a few more important tips about this at the end of the video. For now, let's move on to another thing, that is pronunciation. In case of pronunciation, again, there is a simplified approach here. If you really want to learn how pronunciation is measured in detail, then you should go through Score Guide version 10. For now, I'll tell you in simple words how pronunciation is measured by Pearson's algorithm. They again look at 4 factors here as well. First, they look at number of pronunciation errors you make. Then they look at how you stress on a word. Then they look at how you stress on a sentence. And then at the end, they look at the understandability of your sentence. And if you have no problems in all these 4 areas, they give you 5 points. Now, this is a little different than the traditional scoring of pronunciation, which, if done by a human, depends on how well you have spoken or how I feel about how you are speaking. If I feel like there were no problems in understanding you and you sounded more like native speakers, I'm more likely to give you points compared to when I feel like you were all right, but you didn't sound that much like native speakers. Pearson says that by using this criteria, they are taking away the human biasness when measuring somebody's pronunciation. But at the same time, it introduces some complications. That means if a person pronounces word nicely, but it speaks in a flat tone, they are likely to get very low score. And the reason for that is, one of the criteria here is sentence level stress. That means not just how you say a word, actually how you say an entire sentence, and on which part of the sentence you stressed and whether that was correct or not. And that is the reason why some people who tend to speak nicely but in a flat tone get a really low score compared to people who make occasional errors but can speak with nice variation in tone. Now, if you look at the table right now, you can see that depending on the number of errors you make, your score might start dropping from 5 to 1. If you just make very, very occasional errors or no errors at all, then you get 5 points. If you make occasional errors, then you get 4 points. If you make persistent errors, that means you have problems pronouncing the same kind of words all the time and you are establishing a pattern, then in that case, you will get only 3 points. If you have this problem in many words, not just a few words, then that drops to 2. And if you persistently mispronounce many words, then it becomes 1. And the same applies to word stress and sentence stress as well. Now, if you look at the sentence stress part, what you can see is if your sentence stress is correct, you get 5 points. But if your sentence stress is mostly incorrect, then you get either 4 or 3, depending on the other errors. And if your sentence stress is persistently incorrect, in that case, you just get 2 or 1. Not just that, you also have to think about understandability. And this is one really important area where the fluency can have impact on your score. And regarding understandability, what Pearson says is at least more than 2/3 of your speech should be clear and easy to understand if you want to get 3 or more than 3 points. If your understandability is below 2/3, then it drops to 2. And if it is less than 1/3, it becomes just 1. Now, why fluency is relevant here? Because if you want to increase your score in fluency by increasing fast, you can do that. Because when you increase your speed and you speak really fast without thinking about correction or anything, of course, your score might become 5 out of 5, as we saw in the previous table. But the problem is the faster we speak, the less clear we become. The less clear we become, the less our pronunciation score will be. And the complication because of that is you will get low score in listening and low score in reading, despite scoring 19 in speaking. So it's quite possible for someone to score 19 in speaking by focusing more on fluency. The only problem is their understandability will be compromised and they will start losing a score in listening and reading. And this is a very common problem. We have been helping students get over this problem for a really, really long time. Overall, when you're speaking, there should be variation in your voice and there should be variation in your speed. Now, we help our students to understand whether they have variation or not when they struggle in the speaking part by using a simple software. So let me show you how it looks like. As you can see on the screen right now, there are some waveforms. One of the things that you can notice in this waveform is these are going up and down almost at the same interval. Not just that, between these waveforms, you can also see these gaps here, which are also happening at almost the same interval. And this is what we call rhythm. This variation in tone and variation in speed happening at a predictable interval is what we call rhythm. And this is how the computer looks at your pronunciation. Being human, it's really difficult for me to see this. And that's why when I find that someone is struggling with their speaking, this is what we do. We feed their data into the computer and then look at the variation in their tone using these waveforms. You can use similar kind of software to analyze your voice as well. And if you find that there is not much variation in your tone and there are not gaps at certain interval, that means you may have problem in your pronunciation or you may get really low score in pronunciation, which will affect your score in reading and listening. And our online as well as face-to-face students, depending on their membership level, can take benefit of this facility if they are concerned about their pronunciation. They simply have to send us their recording and we'll do a simple analysis and we'll tell them whether they should work on this part or not. Now let's go back to our discussion of fluency and pronunciation, because now I'll also tell you 5 important tips based on these scoring criteria. Okay, now based on everything we discussed so far, 2 things must have been clear to you. It's not just about how you say a word and it's not just about how fast you speak. And because of that, if you have been following some traditional formula and advice, you might have been getting low score because of that. And I'll tell you what are 5 things that can help you to get better score in your next test. So let me do that. The first one is focus on smoothness than on speed. As I told you, if you speak fast, you tend to get more score because your fluency score starts climbing up. In fact, you can see many people's scorecard and see their score in fluency 90. And a simple trick they apply there is they use template. Template is more about repetition, and when you repeat something, you tend to become more fluent in that. And that is fine. We also do the same thing. We provide our students with template, which they keep using in all question types, which makes them fluent. But at the same time, we tell people that it's not about how fast you use the template. It's all about how you use the template properly, and which means focusing more on the smoothness. So try to be more smooth so that you have fewer hesitations or fewer false starts or fewer pauses, which will help you to improve your score in speaking by improving your score in fluency. But don't worry too much about your speed, and if you speak too fast, you'll be less clear. Less clear means less score in pronunciation because the content will not be clear. Your content depends on clarity, and clarity depends on how you pronounce. So if you are speaking too fast, you'll be less clear, less score in pronunciation, and because of that, less score in other two sections as well. The second thing is you also need to make sure that you do not speak in a flat tone. As I showed you in that software, it's very important that your voice goes up and down, and there is some brief pauses between your sentences. This creates variation in your tone and variation in your speed, which brings intonation and rhythm in your answer, which are really important, but have to be done in the right way, not in a traditional manner. And that's why try to speak varying your tone so that you don't sound flat and you get better score, not just in speaking, but in other sections as well. The third thing that I want to emphasize on is called lower your pitch. Now, this is quite unfortunate thing. And personally, I really feel that this is unfair. Based on my experience of 4 years, what I've found is people who have higher pitch tend to get low score. And because of this, usually female students tend to suffer from this. This should not have happened, but it happens. And there is very less we can do about it other than working on our pitch and lowering it. A good way to lower your pitch is you should try to speak from deep within because it brings more air out. And when it brings more air out, it helps to push your vocal cords apart. And because of that, your pitch goes down. And if your pitch goes down, for some reason, computer tends to give you more score in pronunciation. Now, I'm not saying that if you have lower pitch, then you get more score in pronunciation. But if you have been scoring less in pronunciation, and if you think your pitch is high, lowering your pitch might help in the next exam. So try to do that. Fourth thing is you also need to think about the microphone position. Now, in one of my videos, I have already explained this thing in more detail, where to put the microphone. But in summary, whenever you are using the microphone, make sure that the tip of the microphone is pointing towards the corner of mouth. There is no point putting the microphone above or below this place because it is going to reduce the sensitivity of the microphone, and because of that, it might start picking the background noise more than your own answer. That is the reason why you should think about that as well. And if you are not sure where to put the microphone, please watch the video about the appropriate position for microphone that I have made for you. And the last thing is, it's also important that when you are sitting on a chair, you sit appropriately. And what that means is if you sit straight, your sound becomes more clear, and then it is easy for a microphone to pick up the sound and analyze it. Usually what happens is when we sit like this, then it compresses the diaphragm. Diaphragm is a thin muscular piece that separates your chest cavity from your abdomen. And this diaphragm movement causes the movement of the air inside or outside from your chest. And if you sit like this, then the diaphragm becomes compressed, and because of that, your chest cannot expand or contract adequately. And that lowers the quality of your voice, and some of the frequencies in your voice will be missing. That can create a problem sometimes, especially for people who are losing a score because of the high pitch. It can be a really important thing. When you are sitting, sit straight. Because of this, what happens is the diaphragm will not be compressed, and it can adequately expand and relax. And that can bring in more air or can help in pushing out more air. And that makes your sound more clear. All right, so these are the things to keep in mind if you're interested and if you're concerned about your speaking. And if you are still feeling like I've tried all of this and still it's not helping me, then of course you can contact us. We provide online and face-to-face classes to people who need more help than just watching videos on YouTube, or who need more practice questions or want us to analyze their entire performance through the mock test. If you want to learn about these services and these classes, please go to the link in the description and check the different subscription levels available. Depending on subscription level, we'll be able to help you in different ways. I hope this video was useful, and if you also think the same, then please hit the like button and share it with your friends. If you do not want to miss other videos in the future, please click subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you don't miss the notifications. That's all for today. Enjoy your time, and I'll see you soon.